are some who look at the data and suggest that you're enjoying a competitive advantage. What do you say to that?
There's a lot of factors that go into a race and how well you do. And the biggest change for me is that I'm happy. And sophomore year, where I had my best times competing with the men, I was miserable. And so having that be lifted is incredibly relieving and allows me to put my all into training, into racing. Trans people don't transition for athletics. We transition to be happy and authentic and our true selves. Transitioning to get an advantage is not something that ever factors into our decisions.
You didn't transition to win more medals?
No.
All right, guys, so it seems like we have a silver lining in the fog of lunacy that seems to be getting thicker and thicker and thicker with each and every passing year. As Leah Thomas, the infamous transgender swimmer who dominated biological women in competition during the NCAA swimming championships, has been banned from international competition by the international swimming governing body, FINA, as they voted to restrict transgender women from competition. So again, this is big news, okay? Because Leah Thomas has been the poster boy, right, for what it looks like when you allow biological men to compete against biological women in sports, even at the highest levels of competition, right? The men dominate, right? And because of that, there's been a lot of calls for Leah Thomas to not be allowed to swim against women in these competitive athletic events, right? So with that being said, I want to go ahead and play a video that is going to give us a quick rundown on what is going on here. Again, as FINA has voted to ban transgender women to a certain extent, right? We're going to get into it, from competition. Take a look.
The International Federation of Swimming, aka FINA, has adopted new rules for transgender athletes. On Sunday, at the organization's Extraordinary General Congress, FINA members voted 71.5% in favor of a new gender inclusion policy that would only permit swimmers who transition before age 12 to compete in women's events. Starting Monday, the policy will apply to all FINA events. The ruling appears it would exclude University of Pennsylvania swimmer Leah Thomas from elite competition. Thomas made United States history back in March when she became the first transgender woman to win an NCAA swimming championship. Sunday's vote came after FINA members heard presentations from 3 specialist groups that had been working together to create the policy, following recommendations given by the International Olympic Committee. The IOC urged shifting the focus from individual testosterone levels and calling for evidence to prove when a performance advantage existed. Swimming isn't the only sport examining their rules. On Thursday, the International Cycling Union updated its eligibility rules for transgender athletes with stricter limits that will force riders to wait longer before they can compete. FINA's 24-page policy also has proposals for a new open competition category. FINA has stated that it was setting up, quote, a new working group that will spend the next 6 months looking at the most effective ways to set up this new category.
Yeah, so guys, I gotta admit, I'm just a little confused here because no outlet will outright say it, but I believe that FINA, as the world governing body for swimming when it comes to international competitions, that would effectively bar Leah Thomas from being able to compete in the Olympics against women. I mean that's basically what everybody is expecting, right? Leah Thomas is going to compete against women, at least in the 500, in the Olympics, right? So with this decision, it seems like Leah Thomas can no longer compete in the Olympics. That's what it sounds like. Again, if I'm wrong about that, somebody let me know. But I believe that because this governing body works with the Olympics to determine their own rules, right, for who can compete and who can't compete, under what parameters, I believe this bars Leah Thomas from the Olympics. But, you know, again, I could be wrong about that. However, I think that's what it does. So with that being said, let's read a little bit more about this, because I think we can all agree that this was the right decision, even though I think they should go further than this. So let's read here. World Swimming's governing body has effectively banned transgender women from competing in women's events starting Monday. FINA members widely adopted a new gender inclusion policy on Sunday that only permits swimmers who transition before age 12 to compete in women's events. The organization also proposed a, quote, open competition category. All right, so guys, I'm going to tell you, I've been reading stories all day about so-called inclusion, and I'm sick and tired of this word inclusion, right? It's almost more annoying than the word equity, right? The inclusion word really is pissing me off, right? Because that is the excuse every single time the far left wants to push some asinine gender race policy, right? Inclusion, we got to include everybody. God, man, I'm telling you, it's so annoying. But they're saying that, look, you can only compete as a transgender woman if you transition before puberty, right? The age of 12. And I would say, look, this doesn't go far enough because some of these woke lunatics are going to use this as a means to push for earlier transitions, where they can say, well, you know what? No. You actually need to start transitioning before the age of 12 because if you don't, you're not going to be able to compete in sports. I think that's actually going to put more pressure on the wokes to transition kids at an earlier age. I think they should just straight out say, no, if you transition, you can't compete against the opposite sex, right? You can't compete against the opposite sex, period, right? You can't. And then that way, you ain't even got to worry about that. Now, they are trying to establish an open competition category, and I think that that's fair, right? I agree with that, right? If they want to have a trans category where they all compete against each other, I have no problems with that. I have no problems with that whatsoever. That is what they should do. That way you are being inclusive, okay? But again, that's not going to be enough for the wokes. Quote, this is not saying that people are encouraged to transition by the age of 12. It's what the scientists are saying, that if you transition after the start of puberty, you have an advantage, which is unfair. James Pierce, who is the spokesperson for FINA President Hussein Al-Musamah, told the Associated Press. Well, I think that's inadvertently what you're going to encourage people to do, especially if a whole bunch of these other governing bodies and other, institutions or whatever start implementing this policy. Quote, they're not saying everyone should transition by age 12. That's ridiculous. You can't transition by that age in most countries, and hopefully you wouldn't be encouraged to. Basically, what we're saying is that it is not feasible for people who have transitioned to compete without having an advantage. Okay, so if you know that, then why even put the age there? Just outright ban it, right? Biological males can't compete against biological women and vice versa in international competition. Why even put the age there? Again, putting the age there, you're leaving the door open and you're encouraging people to put more pressure on kids to transition at an early age. So again, that's my problem with this. Because, when you read this story, initially you see it, that's what the headlines, Leah Thomas banned, transgender women banned from competing against biological women. You say, oh yeah, I agree with that. But once you actually read the details of this, it's like, nah, this doesn't go far enough. It doesn't go far enough, okay? Pierce confirmed there are currently no transgender women competing in elite levels of swimming. However, the ruling would seemingly exclude University of Pennsylvania swimmer Leah Thomas from elite competition. The World Professional Association for Transgender Health just lowered its recommended minimum age for starting gender transition, hormone treatment to 14, and some surgeries to 15 or 17. Ding, 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 ding. That's exactly what I'm talking about. The push is going to be, well, you know what? We need to get these kids transition earlier. If this is what they want to do, let's get them transition before 12. That's exactly what's about to happen. FINA's new 24-page policy also promotes a new open competition category. The organization said it is setting up a new working group that will spend the next 6 months looking at the most effective ways to set up this new category. Pierce told the AP that the open competition would most likely mean more events, but those details still need to be worked out. Quote, no one quite knows how this is going to work, and we need to include a lot of different people, including transgender athletes, to work out how it will work, he said. So there are no details of how that will work. The open category is something that will start being discussed tomorrow. The members voted 71.5% in favor at the organization's Extraordinary General Congress after hearing presentations from 3 specialist groups, an athlete group, a science and medicine group, and a legal and human rights group that had been working together to form the policy following recommendations given by the International Olympic Committee last November. The IOC urged shifting the focus from individual testosterone levels and calling for evidence to prove when a performance advantage existed. FINA's, quote, deeply discriminatory, harmful, and unscientific new policy is, quote, not in line with the IOC's framework on fairness, inclusion, and non-discrimination on the basis of gender identity and sex variations. And Lieberman of Athlete Ally, a nonprofit that advocates for LGBTQ athletes, said in a statement, quote, the eligibility criteria for women's category as is laid out in the policy will police the bodies of all women and will not be enforceable without seriously violating the privacy and human rights of any athlete looking to compete in the women's category, Lieberman said. Sorry, I gotta use my mocking voice for these people because the things they say are just absolutely ridiculous. Okay? It's absolutely ridiculous. FINA said it recognizes that, quote, some individuals and groups may be uncomfortable with the use of medical and scientific terminology related to sex and sex-linked traits, but some use of sensitive terminology is needed to be precise about sex characteristics that justify separate competition categories. In March, Leah Thomas made history in the United States as the first transgender woman to win an NCAA swimming championship, the 500-yard freestyle. So, yeah, I mean, look, here's the thing. This is a step in the right direction. However, it doesn't go far enough. But I am happy to see that there's some common sense coming from some of these people running these organizations to say, hey, you know what? This is unfair. We can't have, biological men compete against biological women in sports. It really is setting us back when it comes to women's rights. And it's just not the right thing to do. It really makes no sense. Okay? You can compete with your own sex or you can compete against other trans folks and that's it, right? I feel like that is the fairest solution and I'm glad that this solution is actually being pushed. I just wish they would just flat out ban biological men and women from competing against each other in these sports, period, right? My only problem is the whole age thing. So let me know what you guys think. Make sure you like, comment, and subscribe. Most importantly, share a Black conservative perspective. Peace.